Welcome back to another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Richard Thompson. Today I'm joined by Heidi Walker, entrepreneur, business leader, and one of the driving forces behind Walker Seafoods and Walker Tuna. Heidi's story is fascinating, from growing up around entrepreneurship and advertising in Sydney to helping build a hugely successful Australian seafood business while balancing family, leadership, and the pressures that come with high performance. In this episode, we unpack business, resilience, identity, risk-taking, and the moments that quietly shape who we become. Whether you're building a career, running a business, or trying to juggle ambition with life, this conversation is for you. All right, let's get into it. Heidi Walker, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate being here.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
You are the face of Walker's Tuna, Walker's Seafood, the conglomerate that is. But I am so interested to hear about the genesis of you and what how you're put together to be able to manage all of that. You've got kids, you've got a lovely husband, you've got an incredible business that's gone from strength to strength, and where we're going in the future as well. But take me back, childhood, growing up.
Yeah. So grew up in Sydney. Really great family. My dad was a refugee from Latvia. So he came out in World War II and then didn't speak any English. Moved to Canleyvale in Sydney. So he had a difficult upbringing because, you know, you don't speak English and you're bringing weird stuff to school and that type of thing. And then he met my mum, and I've got an older brother and a younger brother, so I'm the middle. And I was always aware of the challenges Dad faced, and he started his own advertising agency in Sydney. So he was an entrepreneur and very successful advertising agency. He did the AIDS ad with the bowling alley. That was his. He had Coca-Cola. He had Old El Paso. He had a lot of big accounts.
From someone who started without speaking English.
Yes. He went to he did a TAFE course to just teach himself about this sort of thing, and got a business partner, and he was uber successful. And we went from living in, relatively comfortable house growing up in St Ives to a much nicer house suddenly, and nicer cars. And then we had a farm near Bowral, 150 acres. I grew up with motorbikes and horses. It was just our retreat that we went to on the weekend.
How old are you here in that, I guess, the shift between, let's say, middle class to upper middle class?
I would have been about 6 when that started to happen.
Is the penny dropping to understand his work ethic and hard work and risk to what we've been able to get at home?
Yeah, I mean, that took a lot longer to realise what he had achieved and done.
Yeah.
I think as a kid, you just ride along with whatever's
this is the new house.
happening.
Okay.
And his first, I'll never forget him bringing home his first car, his first corporate car that he called it, was a mini, a Morris Minor. It was actually a Morris Minor, and he was so excited. That was his first corporate car he bought. And then I remember we actually had to get seatbelts installed in it. God, I'm showing my age. But yeah, suddenly, driving Range Rovers and BMWs and horses, and I kind of thought that was normal. I mean, we did live in an area that was quite wealthy, and to me that was very normal to have all these things. But I saw how hard my dad worked as well, and I'd go to work with him in the school holidays. He had art directors and people like that, which was so much fun because back then it's no computers. It was all hand-drawn for commercials, and I was in a few commercials and things like that. So yeah, it was a really fun industry. I can remember ringing him. I'd get home from school on the landline. I would ring his secretary at 3:00 and say, "Where's Dad? I just need to talk to Dad." "Oh, darling, he's still at lunch." That was the advertising days back in the 80s.
He hasn't come back yet.
He hasn't come back yet. So he'd be quite often pull up in a taxi at 6 p.m. after his lunch.
And Mum's role?
So Mum was stay at home. Mum and wife to my dad, and she worked and then met him, and obviously they had money, and she, maybe 3 kids, he worked from home, which seemed very normal to me at the time too. But I remember thinking to myself, I don't think I would want to stay at home. I don't think I would want to stay at home.
When do you recall that being the first sort of thought?
Probably in my early teens. Okay. I just thought, no, that's just not something that I really enjoyed what Dad did. I really enjoyed his side of life, of, the fun. And he used to take me out to lunch occasionally in North Sydney. He had his advertising agency in North Sydney. And I just thought that was just so much fun to sit in a corporate sort of lunch environment and everyone's there hustling and making deals. And I thought that's cool.
Was your dad someone who would expressly impart knowledge on you, or is it just more by osmosis and...
A bit of both.
Okay.
A bit of both. He would like to take us into his office to see how it all worked and what was going on, and sit with this person and learn something, and sit with that person and learn something, and and get us involved. And through osmosis, definitely. I mean, he had dealing with the Packers and people like that, and he did some work for Women's Day and New Idea, and when he was doing contract work, and so you're picking up the phone and someone really important's ringing. That was before mobile phones.
Car phones, maybe.
Yeah, they did have car phones, and I was like, they're on their car phone, Dad.
And so you shoot through school.
Yep.
And then what's the pathway for you at that stage?
You know what? I didn't really have one. I really didn't know at school. I knew I wanted to work in business. I wanted to be more like my dad. I wanted to have business. So I thought, well, I want to work in an advertising agency or something along those lines. But I really didn't know what I wanted to study at university. And back then it wasn't sort of, as important to go to university if you really didn't know. If you want to be a doctor or a teacher, of course, you've got to go to university. But I didn't really know. So I thought I'd take a year off and make a decision, but then I just took jobs. I straight out of school, I just worked in a cafe just to earn some money, and then got a job at a computer company. They're still there, Attaché Software in North Sydney. I was their receptionist. I thought I was flying. I called myself, I didn't call myself a receptionist. I called myself the director of communications.
I love that.
And that was in the time when Optus had just arrived into Australia, and they were trying to get our business to handle phones, and so they invited me to their Christmas party on the top of the Optus Tower, which was in North Sydney, and I was pretending to be someone I wasn't.
The director of communications.
Yeah, that's right. When I realized I was just a receptionist.
That's a cool story.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that and got poached by another company that said, "Wow, you're so good on the phones. You can recognise people's voices straight away." And I thought, before someone said something, "Oh, hi Brad, how are you?" Or "Hi, this person," and they poached me, and I went to. They were engineers and accountants, and so I was their receptionist for a while, and then just sort of grew that way into other roles. Ended up working in the city for really big News Limited and the Australian, and some big companies. Did a lot of long-term contract work, temp sort of work, things like that, but just absolutely loved it. Loved being, what I thought was a high-flying businesswoman.
And then talk to me about when you met your husband.
So I met Pavo in Sydney. He's from Sydney as well, at a party in a nightclub in the city. And, Pavo's a very outgoing person, really good-looking guy, especially back in the day. When we were all a bit younger. And we just connected, and I don't think I saw him again for another 2 weeks. And he rang and left a message on my phone, and I couldn't, because I didn't catch his name when we were at the nightclub. And so I thought, was it Pablo? What was his name? And then he'd left a message on my phone. I kept playing it over and over, going, I can't hear what his name was. So he lived in North Sydney, and we just ended up, connecting and going out for years. And he'd always had interest in the marine industry. When I met him, he was running some boats on Sydney Harbour. He also had driven water taxis and things like that, so he had a marine background. Which I thought was interesting. And we were having a great time in Sydney, partying and no kids, living out of home.
At that stage, you were working for, at the stage that he makes this decision or looks at the boats on the water, which is such a great story.
Yeah.
You're working where? You're working for?
At that time, I'd had a few jobs. I worked for Bob L from Leader Holdings. But at that time, actually, it was when, sadly, my dad passed away, and he had retired quite early, because when he passed away, he was 56. He had bought a big health food store in Sydney just to have, something to do. And when he passed away, there was no one to run the store, so I'd quit my job at Leader Holdings to take the store over to do something with it to try and sell the business and that sort of thing. And that's when and Pavo was working in Sydney Harbour Control at that point, so he got a really high up job controlling Sydney Harbour. So all the ships that come through, it's sort of like the control tower for the airport, but it's for the
boats.
For boats, so it's a lot slower. You haven't got planes coming in, like boats coming in as fast as planes. But so I was doing that, and that's when Pavo saw, he was always interested in fishing, and he used to see the tuna boats coming in through under the harbour bridge, because they had massive cameras all through Sydney. You'd be amazed at what you can see out of this control tower. Actually, it doesn't exist there anymore. Barangaroo got built, and he'd watch the tuna boats coming in and unloading, and he went to TAFE to upgrade his skipper tickets, and he met someone that had a tuna boat. This is it. This sounds like the best career ever.
Has there been much conversations at home about this?
Then or now?
Then.
Oh yeah, because when he said, "I think I might buy a tuna boat," no.
Did that statement come out of the absolute blue for you, or was that been percolating for some time?
No, I think it came out of the blue.
Right.
Yeah.
So your long-term
because there's a big
partner,
difference between going out on the tuna boat for a week or 4 days and having some fun doing. We're going to go on the trip with them. Oh yeah, go and have a great time. To I'm going to do this now.
Had you owned a dinghy or a boat before that?
No, no.
It's such a great story.
Yeah. So no, we were somewhat. He was corporate. I was corporate. We were partying in Sydney, having a great time, and suddenly we're going to be tuna fishers.
And for the layman, which was me only a few weeks ago, a tuna boat is designed to go out to sea for some time.
Depends where you work it out of. So if you're working the boat out of Sydney or south, they're very weather dependent. So the boats might only go for 4 days at a time,
Right.
3 days. Up here we have a beautiful weather windows, as my husband calls it. We're sort of protected from those southerly trade winds from down south, so the boats can go out for 2 weeks at a time.
Right.
Yep.
And so how was he pitching this to you?
Oh, he was just going to do it. There was no pitch.
Sorry. Okay, so there wasn't. It was asking for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah. And look, and he did say it's a dream of his, which I again was unaware of. And I sort of said, and we weren't engaged at this point, but we'd been going together for quite a few years. And I liked him, and he liked me, and we discussed, a future together.
But
And I did.
Nothing with tuna involved at that stage?
Not with tuna involved at this point. Yeah. I had the dream in my head that, Sydney and where we'd probably live in Sydney and what school our kids would go to, just based on how we grew up. And then all of a sudden, we're going to own a tuna boat. But when he was talking about this, I kept thinking, well, it will still be based in Sydney because you can run the boat out of the Sydney fish market. So he would just be gone a bit of the time. I thought, well, that's not the end of the world, until I saw the boat that he bought, which was the oldest tuna boat on the east coast of Australia, wooden, just no toilet on board, just this old wooden boat. And the reason he bought it was because the fishery, which is the Eastern Tuna Billfish Fishery, which is a Commonwealth fishery, had moved to a quota system. So you have to own quota to be able to fish for the 5 species.
Like a license.
Like a license, yeah. And with quota attached to that. And at that point, no one wanted to. No, there were nothing to buy. You couldn't buy the quota. You couldn't buy the licenses. But this guy,
it would follow the ship or the boat, I'd presume.
Yeah, well, a lot of people would do that. So this guy packaged it up. Well, if you buy my boat, I'll give you the. Because he knew he'd never be able to sell that boat. Bought the boat and the license. That was a lot of money back then. And we had some savings, but we weren't certainly flush with money.
Had he done is he someone who at that stage before buying that done a business plan, or is he just literally going, we'll work this out, I just want that, let's go?
Yep, the latter.
The latter, right.
Yes.
Okay.
And qualified, and Parvo is very good with his hands. Parvo can fix anything. How if there's anything broken, the girls, Dad, he can fix anything. He can fix cars, he can fix engines, he can fix, so he's very smart, and he had a big vision, and it was just jump in the deep end and start swimming.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then at what point did with his weather window, did he go, all right, we actually need to relocate the boat to the Sunshine Coast?
The first trip he did out of Sydney, I stood on the wharf at the Sydney Fish Market, I was crying. He sailed off into the distance.
There goes my beloved.
There he goes. Doesn't know what he's doing. And I was worried for him as well because he didn't know what he was doing. And, it's a very dangerous industry. The tuna industry is probably one of the commercial fishing is probably one of the most dangerous industries in the world.
Yeah. For the layman, where's the danger?
Well, you are so far out to sea. You are out of helicopter range. You're in wild weather. You fires, boats sinking, injuries, hooks flying around the deck, all that sort of thing, catching massive fish with swordfish with massive swords that could cut you. There have been plenty of deckhands and skippers been winched off boats, helicopters, because they've been injured.
And all the tuna's caught by hand.
It's line caught,
yeah,
but they gaff everyone in individually and bring it in by hand.
Yeah, okay.
So it's one big long line with branch lines,
and then so he's come back. He survived, obviously.
Yeah, he survived.
Trip.
Came
How did
back.
that go?
Yeah, not so well. No, I'm not sure
Got
he caught
a
any
few whiting.
fish. Yeah, I don't think he did that well. So we sort of persevered for a little bit, and then it was just too hard. In Sydney, you can't get tradespeople to come down to the boat. Then they don't want to come down to the fish markets and fix your boat. And everyone who was working out of the fish market had been established there. Italians and Greeks and people that had been there a long time, and no one's your friend. No one wants to help some new guy, some skip that's just rocked on in thinking he's going to be a part of this. So he said to me, well, there's just no way we can work out of here. We'll have to move north. And before we got to the Sunshine Coast, we ended up in Foster-Tuncurry on the mid-north coast. So I've gone from, corporate and that sort of thing in my high
Sydney
heels.
life
Yeah.
to Foster-Tuncurry.
To Foster-Tuncurry, which, to explain to people, is a very small seaside town. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful place, but very small. And, there's a lot of welfare in that town and a lot of issues in that town, which I came to realise very quickly. And also you can't just get a job that you want. I'm not getting some highfalutin job. There are no...
You probably get a spot at the RSL or something.
Yeah, that's right, which I thought, I'm not doing that. So here I am in a town with... He's not there because he's at sea. I don't know anyone. And there's really not much to do. And it's a 3-hour drive from Sydney, so it's not like you could just pop down, like going to Brisbane from the Sunshine Coast. So I ended up getting a job in a real estate office just because I wanted work. I had to work. So I was there marketing sort of assistant or manager, and that was good because at least I'm engaging with people and meeting people, and I think I made the most of that. And then I used to see these cars pulling. We were next to a drive-through bottle shop, and they'd be branded like Bundaberg rum or something. I think, what's that job? That looks like fun. I love alcohol. I could sell alcohol because I was a little bit tired of being stuck in this tiny little real estate office. So funnily enough, I don't know whether I manifested it, a job became available at Carlton United Brewery, so I must have read it in the paper or online, probably in the paper. I went for the interview and they said, we're looking for a rep, for this area, and it'll encompass probably about a 200-kilometre radius. So I can do that. Yep, that'll be me. And I convinced them that I'd easily be able to do this job and got the job.
Amazing.
I know. So, and Carlton United's big.
Yeah.
The Foster's Group, they're one of Australia's top 5 listed companies. It was right up my alley because now I was reporting into people in Melbourne. I felt like I had a corporate gig. They would fly you down to Sydney for events, and it was great. Loved it.
How long were you doing that before you then formally relocated?
How long was I doing that? Well, I was there in Foster doing that role for a couple of years. I became the number 1 rep in Australia.
For CUB?
Yep.
Wow.
So we go to all the conferences.
They were thirsty at Foster-Tuncurry.
So what had happened, the Port Tui's rep, the person before me just hadn't done a great job.
Low bar.
And you're in a country town, your boss is not there. They're based somewhere else, like Coffs Harbour or Sydney perhaps. I've got every opportunity to secure every beer tap, every bottle shop stack everywhere. And I worked out pretty quickly that people get paid their welfare on a certain day, and that if you had the big beer stack at the door on that day, you were going to make all the sales. So, I had that for a few years, absolutely loved it. And then Arvo decided that we couldn't make any money in Foster-Tuncurry. This was not the town, and that he heard that fish were biting on the Sunshine Coast.
Your unwavering support is commendable.
I think I might have to remind him of that.
I'm sure he has a completely different story about this whole thing.
Yeah, he might. I'm glad he's not here, actually. But, I do remember we didn't have any money because running a boat costs a lot, fuel and gear and bait. And when you go out there and you don't catch fish, it's the same cost. It's, like opening a cafe and you have no customers that day. It's the same cost, except that we are actually throwing bait into the ocean and no one's biting. So it's like making all the coffees, but no one's actually,
drinking it.
yeah. So we decided to go out for dinner to the local Chinese restaurant, the Changhua. I can't remember, it's called the Changhua.
Up here or still at Foster?
Sorry, still down there. And but we didn't have $20 to go spend at the Changhua that night, so we didn't go. And that was the decision. Pavel said, well, we need to move, like we can't.
So all your work at CUB is funding this?
Yeah, the rent, I'm paying the rent and
Sure.
other things, and he's desperately trying to get this up and running and was doing a good job, and it's not his fault. It's a massive learning curve.
Sure.
And fish move around and other people weren't catching. You know, you'd have your good times where, yes, you brought in a load of fish, but you have 2 or 3 times after that, suddenly that money's gone. So he said, yeah, let's move to the Sunshine Coast.
Hey guys, just popping in quickly to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you're enjoying this episode, it would mean a lot if you take a second to follow the show, leave a like or review, and share it with a friend. That support genuinely helps us grow and keep bringing you more great conversations every single week. All right, let's get back into it. Talk to me around that time, because this is like an interesting element of pivot and persist for me. I like that as a concept because I've experienced that myself, I guess. But are there conversations at home? Is it like unequivocal support going, all right, let's just do that? Or are you having more difficult conversations behind closed doors going, I don't know whether this is the right path here because we could just go back to Sydney and pick up where we left off?
Yeah, there were definitely those discussions, but we were in quite deep now because we bought the boat and we're paying the bank back, and probably no one else would buy that boat now. And Pavel wanted to give it a go, and, you know, he's a smart guy, and I knew that he was never going to give up. It was not something that he would throw in. So he said, well, I'll take the boat up to the Sunshine Coast and we'll see how it goes up there. Let me test the waters up there.
Purely on a fishing supply.
To see if he can. And he said there's more infrastructure up there. It's, you know, it's an area where there are a lot more boats and there's a whole dedicated area, and you'll be able to get access to tradies and things like that. So because Foster was so small, you know, and it was sort of a dying town, sadly, where there wasn't the infrastructure there and the ability to access tradespeople. So I said, all right. So off he went with our last tank of fuel. So that, like, we filled the boat. That was it. We had no more money. Just fuel the boat. And he had the best catch he ever had.
Up here.
Yeah, up here. Yeah. He rang me and said, yeah, I'm not coming back. So I need to fish out of here now. This is good. So maybe you need to pack up and come up here.
Is that the same period of time where you tell the story that he's on the other side, he's on the playground, the grass area
yes.
opposite the wharf?
Yes. So in between us being in sort of Foster and moving, we'd actually upgraded our vessel. So we'd gotten rid of the old timber one because it was just not workable and it was so unsafe, and it was terrible for Pavel to have to live on that thing. It leaked and it didn't have a toilet, and, you know, it's just awful. So we'd bought a nice fiberglass vessel, our first vessel, Assassin.
Had you moved?
I hadn't moved at this point. We bought it.
So
we
you
were
doubled
in Foster.
down.
We doubled down, yeah.
You said, we love this concept.
Yeah.
You see, you're nonchalant.
Upgrade the boat. That'll make it all better.
Massive. So you made the decision. You said the boat's the problem. The boat's getting in the way.
Yes.
We're going to go speak to the bank.
Yes.
And upgrade the boat.
Yes.
And this is before the Sunshine Coast door opened?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So he'd taken the Assassin up to the Sunshine Coast, and at that point, you know, cash flows, as you know, there are some days you feel really good.
Yeah.
There's some days you don't feel so good. So at that point, we could fuel the boat up. Off it went. Had this brilliant catch. And he said, I'm not bringing the boat back. We need to work up here. And I said,
you're effectively if that was a bad catch.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a few bad catches away from going under, really. And you're right. When he got there, because we didn't have money, we couldn't buy a new line and gear for the boat. So there were a lot of big companies on the Sunshine Coast and Mooloolaba running their tuna vessels, a huge tuna port back then on the Sunshine Coast. And he went through all their bins and collected out all their line that they just discarded because they didn't need to untangle it. They just buy brand new line. So he went to the park with these toothless deckies that he had at the time, and they joined it all together and unwound it all and put it on his boat. So he had some line to use and went out and had his big catch.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so then he calls you, says, we've got a catch of a lifetime.
Yep.
We're not coming home.
Yeah.
So are you going, okay, let's go?
Look, I did want to get out of Foster. It was
Sure.
not where I wanted to be, but I loved my job. And I knew that if I went to the Sunshine Coast, that I would have to start again with I really was enjoying my time at Carlton United. And this was at the time when they were splitting. So Foster's had bought Beringer Blass, and they were splitting into a wine and beer side sort of business. So they were becoming a lot bigger. So I said to them, so new roles were opening up. So I said to them, well, how about you move me to the Sunshine Coast? I put the proposal to them. Why don't you move me to the Sunshine Coast? I can do something up there. And they said, well, we only have a merchandising role up there. Would you be happy doing that? We'll relocate you. We'll pay for it all. But I can do that. So I convinced them. They flew me up. Little tiny plane. I'll never forget. I got on this tiny little plane out of Coffs Harbour to fly to the Sunshine Coast. And I became a merchandiser with Carlton United. And they had an office here in Sugar Road.
Yeah, right.
I think there are about 10 people there, but such a downgrade for me. I'd gone from being the number one rep in the country to now being a merchandiser, and all the reps in the office they weren't looking down on me, but I wasn't on their level because I wasn't one of them.
Right.
So I made it very clear to them that I was the number one rep and that they were lucky to have me.
Even if they had to be taught.
That's right, yeah. So, so then we just landed on the Sunshine Coast.
What time span from that first catch up here to when you thought we need to expand pretty quickly?
So in between we got married.
Right.
Got married in that time frame. And I was still doing my corporate gig. So I got promoted really quickly, obviously. So I went from being some of the people out of Foster said, the last time I saw you the merchandiser and now you're the sales manager. I don't know how, you skipped a whole bunch of levels.
Yeah. Skipped a few ladders.
Yeah. So I took over the whole area and was managing a lot of staff, and I had teams in North Queensland, and so I was flying around a lot. But it was all the cut and thrust of it, which I loved. And the side, I was helping Parvo a little bit with his business too, because obviously he's bringing in a catch and they have to be sold, and you do that through a wholesaler on the Sunshine Coast. So he was doing that out of someone down on Park and Parade. And then, we made the decision we wanted to have kids. And I said to him, I don't want to have kids if you're going to be at sea, because I really think you'll miss out on so much, when deep down I was really thinking I'm not doing this on my own.
Yeah, it's the pitch.
Yeah. And I was getting a little bit over corporate, because you can get very stifled in those big companies. I would have big opportunities to sell a deal or to get tap deals signed off. Or, we were moving into wine as well, wineless. And you'd have to get I always forget the return on investment. That became you got to get the return on investment. We need to do an ROI. I said, by the time I do the ROI, I'm going to lose the opportunity. I'm here at the pub. I'm going to sign off this. No, Heidi, no. Don't you sign off on anything. So that sort of really, it all changed. Corporate went from sort of loose and fun to just really tightening up. And that would have been in around 2009 or 10, I think. And at that point, Parvo said, well, if I'm going to work on the business and not go to sea, then we can't just have one boat, because that won't make any sense. So why don't we buy another boat? And that way I can manage the boats, and I'll be like the shore manager and running it. And it's all excellent. What a great idea. Let's just do more of this. I don't know. I never really thought about it. I never sort of went, oh, we shouldn't do this. I think we were going okay at this point. We were making money. I think we'd bought our first house. It was enjoyable making money. I like making money. Most people do.
Yeah.
So we bought another vessel. I had quit my job then. I just said I'd had enough and I didn't want to do anymore. And I'd suffered a few miscarriages. And I think that was part of the stress, the job I had. I think I attribute it to that, And the minute I quit, I'm trying to think when my first daughter Hannah was born in 2013. Yeah. So I think we bought the second vessel about 2012, and then I got pregnant in 2013.
How long after you quit?
Not that long, 3 or 4 months. And didn't have the miscarriage, and I just went, well, maybe this was all meant to be,
Was it a hard period of time at that juncture for you, given that you're corporate your whole life, you're not falling pregnant, and almost that identity piece of going, who would I be if?
Yeah, a little bit of that. So I kind of threw myself into Parvo's business and turned that into a bit of my business. then I became Heidi from Walker Seafoods. I was best-selling beer rep. I was business development executive, whatever. Then I became Heidi Walker Seafood. So I'd come from branding. I knew, I was there when we launched Pure Blonde, which was a very big beer launch. We work with the biggest brand, VB and Carlton United and all this, and I knew about branding. So I knew that we needed to do that with our business. So I said, that's it. It's got to be called Walker Seafoods Australia. It needs a logo. We need to start treating this more like a serious business.
When was that relative to the second vessel purchase?
Probably around that same time.
Yeah.
We're going to need
You're
a website.
looking at this as a potential of a fairly large operation.
Yeah, that's right. Because I think we then got our third vessel not long after that. The bank was very generous to us at that time. That would have been 2013-ish. Fourth vessel, and a fifth vessel. It all happened within a really short time frame. And I got pregnant again. I can remember being in the hospital up at Budrum, breastfeeding my newborn with the laptop on my lap, and the midwife saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "We've just bought another boat in New Zealand and someone's got to steam it back and they need someone to book the tickets to fly the crew over there to bring it back." She's looking at me like I was mad. But who else is going to do it? Like, my husband's busy down there running the business. Who else is going to do all this? It's just how it is. You have to do it yourself. No way around it. So that was, I think, if I look back now, having young kids at that same time when we were expanding, and you speak to a lot of people, that it just seems to happen that way. It all happens at the same time. That was a very stressful time, really stressful time to be raising little kids and expanding the business, and it's all a very steep learning curve.
Is there an end game discussion here as to how this business? What's the level of success we're looking for, or
to just keep going?
Okay,
I think we started talking about 7 boats, 8 boats. Let's just, because the business was going really well.
Yeah.
We were successful, and we were now supplying a lot of chefs. Neil Perry, Tetsuya, Josh Nyland, all the chefs had said, we want walkers. We want walkers.
So Neil Perry is a fairly prominent person in the story of
Yes.
walkers and continues to be. How did that come about, and what differentiates, for the layman, what differentiates the tuna that you guys get
Yes.
compared to the next tuna company?
So Neil Perry was introduced to us by a lovely man called John Sussman, and he runs a seafood marketing company in Sydney called Fish Tales. Really lovely guy. And they're like best friends. They'd been doing business for years. And he said, it's a very small industry, the seafood industry. You get introduced to all these people. And he said, my mate, Chef Neil Perry, he'd love to get fish off you guys. And I would love that too. This is going to be fabulous for us. So he just introduced us, and it was great. And it just took off because chefs like Neil Perry are all about the provenance. They want to know where their produce is coming from. And not just, it comes from Mooloolaba. It comes from Heidi and Parvo off that vessel. And he was probably our first chef to really do that. Actually, along with George Columbaris, who I met at Noosa Food and Wine. He was at an event up there when it first wasn't Noosa Food and Wine back then. I think it was called something else. And I saw him at a table. I just walked up to him and I said, "George, we own tuna boats and I could supply you and we could fly it down." And he couldn't believe this woman just come up to him and said it. He sent me an email. So I sent him an email. I only had my Hotmail email at that point. I didn't even have an @Walker Seafoods. And he said, "I just love your story. This is great." And we just started flying him swordfish down. And the wholesaler packer we were using going, "You can't do that, Heidi. It doesn't work that way. You're meant to send run of catch. You're not meant to do one fish at a time." Well, why can't I do that? Just put it in a box and send it to him. Like, it's that simple. But people hadn't thought like that. People thought, it's an old industry. It's been around a long time. And a lot of these middlemen and wholesalers are there to move the whole catch. If you're coming in with 20 tonne of fish and Heidi's saying send 150-kilo swordfish to this guy, it's really annoying. So they'd had their old way of doing it and went, "That's not the way I want to do it." And that's when I was heavily involved with the business now. And Parva and I made the decision that we needed our own facility to pack out of and export out of, to not use someone else because you were hamstrung by their ways of thinking and the constraints and that type of thing. So we managed to, it was very difficult at the time to get access to one of the facilities down on the wharf at Park and Parade because you have to be on the water. There's only 4 of them. And just happened to be someone was relocating to the Gold Coast. We met with them, drove down to Brisbane, had the meeting, and they said, "Sure, we'll let you take over the lease." We went to the landlord and took the whole thing over and had to then come across. But that brought, so many new systems and staff and learning, because we'd gone from someone who had it all set up to us now doing it ourselves. A massive learning curve. Like, I remember the day we opened, it was very exciting, but it's also very nervous, because you need to be able to have a license to export. Under your terms, you have to get that from Aquis. You have to have all of this signed off. Suddenly you're putting fish on planes yourself. Someone else is not doing it for you.
Yeah, right. Huge learning curve.
Huge.
And are you just using that for you guys, or are you also...
We were just using it for us, but we had the idea that if someone else wanted to pack through us, we would happily do that. But unfortunately, in our industry, people aren't happy for your successes. People...
So no other tuna company used you?
No one else really would. And look, and that was fine with us, because we were going to keep growing the business anyway, and we had 5 vessels that day going through our factory, and that was, that,
At that stage, how many people are working underneath?
So we had gone realistically from sort of 10 or 12 staff with the 2 vessels and to 50 staff very, very quickly, which again is a challenge. You've got to get the right people. But a lot of those were people on the vessels, or to do with the vessels, because you get to a certain size of business, you're not big enough to have an HR manager. You're not big enough to have a... You would know that.
I feel you, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a big decision to put on.
God, wouldn't it be great to have one of those?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great? I wish I had all those departments, in IT department, all of that.
Yeah.
We put on a financial controller full-time. She started part-time and we put her on full-time, and that was a big day, and then just putting on more staff and just seeing where these people can add value. But they've also got to be able to work across the whole business. You can't have someone pigeonholed into a role to go, well, I only do that. It doesn't work that way in family-run smaller businesses.
Yeah. And then, so your primary product is tuna to the exporter.
So
who's sending that, or you guys become the exporter.
So we are now the exporter.
To other countries who then send it off to restaurants effectively.
Yeah, so our 5 species in our fishery, so we're in the Eastern Tuna Billfish fishery, which is Commonwealth fishery, yellowfin tuna, big eye tuna, albacore tuna, swordfish and striped marlin. So they're all quoted species. So you have to own quota of those species. So it's an SFR, which equates to kilos, so a statutory fishing right, which then equates to how many kilos. So if you're going to go out and catch in a year, 200 tonne of yellowfin or something like that, you have to have the quota to do that. So you can either lease that quota in or own it. And Pavo was smart enough, and he understood it a lot more than I did, to buy the quota. He said, we need to be buying quota. We need to be really investing in quota. So we heavily invested in buying quota. At a time when a lot of people were exiting the industry, there was the global financial crisis, wiped out a lot of fishermen that just couldn't operate anymore. It all got too hard. So I think the fleet went from 180 down to about 60 very quickly in a few years. Yeah, and as they were exiting, Pavo was buying all the quota at a great cost, millions and millions of dollars.
And so for an international ship, or boat, they're prohibited from coming into Australian waters.
Correct.
To catch the fish.
You have to be an Australian flagged vessel,
and so
working in the ETBF with the license and with the quota.
Yeah.
But you can lease it off other people. So if you don't own quota, you could buy a vessel. Like tomorrow, you can go buy a tuna vessel and fish it, as long as you have access to get that quota. And you could lease it off someone else that wasn't using it or hadn't caught as much as they thought. Yeah,
interesting. And then how are you going, how are you both going as parents through this phase?
I think we're both excellent parents.
Because you've grown up in a household with a dad that was so entrepreneurial and making it happen, and a mum at home.
Yes.
Being the stable one.
Yes.
But you guys you both are incredibly entrepreneurial and going at it together, which is it's just a beautiful story. But it's a conversations. How is the balance?
So Pavo's parents moved up from Sydney for a few years, which was a massive help to us. Not having family here is really challenging. My younger brother also moved up. He had kids the same age.
Nice.
So that was good. But I employed a full-time nanny. So when Hannah got to an age where I thought, I don't want to put her into, childcare, and not because I didn't want her to be in childcare, it was more that would also be a constraint for me.
Give you a curfew.
Drop them off and pick them up.
Yeah,
so if I had someone at home prepping dinners, doing all that. So we found a lovely lady that became Anna's nanny and just gave me so much freedom to be at work. And, you know, she would go to the shops for us and buy things and things like that. So.
And then what's any conversations yet about what the business, the potential of what it could be, or are you
just keep going
just
bigger?
Keep going. I love that.
It's going so well. We'll just keep going. Just go bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think and by this stage you're getting a handle on how it all works, and you know, you think you know. And I had just started to say that I wanted to get MSC certification, which is Marine Stewardship Council, which is a non-for-profit. It was set up by WWF, and it now is the world's biggest sort of eco-label for wild-caught fishing around the world. So any types of wild-caught fishing, whether prawns or lobsters or halibut or whatever it is. And there was no one in Australia had it. No one in the Southern Hemisphere had it.
For tuna or for any?
Well, for those 5 species.
Yeah, sure.
So,
and so what's involved with getting that in the sense of
what
yeah, I'm sure. But what is their principal mandate? What are they saying you need to be sustainable? Effectively, if you're being officially sustainable.
Yes. So there's a lot of science behind it. So they look at the science of the actual fishery itself.
Right.
You know, and the health of the stocks of the fishery and things like that. So it's expensive. You need all the science behind it. You need all the evidence. You need to be able to provide everything they need. So I started to say to Papa, we need to do this. And, you know, and he was great. He's like, yep, I agree with you. And this is when social media had started, the Instagram had really started the thing. And I could see all the chefs saying things like, oh, I would never put tuna on my menu. Not sustainable. And I knew we were a really sustainable fishery because we were governed by AFMA, Australian Fisheries Management Authority. And Commonwealth fisheries generally have a lot of money thrown at them by the Commonwealth government to keep them sustainable, because by law they have to be sustainable. Whereas state-based fisheries, not so much. So I knew. So I would argue with chefs. I'd argue with them online. I would argue with them face-to-face. It is sustainable. I know it is. I know, like, we are one of the best tuna fisheries in the world in sustainability. They just wouldn't believe me. So I thought, if I get MSC certification, then no one can argue with that. Because if you get that blue tick, it's huge. You know, Jamie Oliver was all about it. Nigella Lawson, Neil Perry at the time was all about it. So I spoke with MSC and they were so excited because they thought, you'll be the first ones. So normally you certify the fishery itself, not a company.
So they would go to the tuna. Who are they getting usually? Who would they go to?
They would normally go like either to your governing body or association.
Right.
We didn't have one because I don't know why we didn't have one at the time. Or they would just approach some of the big players in it to say, we're thinking of doing this. And everyone went, no, we're not doing that. No way, I'm not putting money into that. That's a stupid idea. Why on earth would you want MSC?
So all the other tuna fishing operations
said no
in Australia said no.
So this was just for our East Coast because we are the Eastern tuna.
Sorry, yep.
So Cape York down to Tasmania.
East Coast fisheries have said
we're not doing it.
We're
not doing it. I said, I don't care if you're not doing it, and I'll just do it myself. So MSC said, well, we could just certify your company. It means no one else can use that certification on their tuna. And I went, great. Let's do it. So
when year was this, Hides?
We would have started the process in 2013. So when my daughter was born.
But that's like I feel like every year's a bigger year for sustainability across all things, all industries. But that would have been, how old was MSC? How old was that blue tick process in fishing generally before then?
How long had it been around?
Yeah.
It would have been 20 years or so.
Okay.
But I have to say Australia was a little bit behind in the times in terms of all that sustainability piece at that point.
Yeah.
It was quite big in the US and Europe, very big. You know, people knew about sustainable fishing and the blue tick.
Yeah, right.
It hadn't sort of come to Australia. They probably hadn't had the funds as well to promote it so heavily here. But I knew about it. Just Instagram had just opened up this whole world to me of chefs talking about it. So I said, that's okay, we'll do it ourselves. And they said, well, you'll have to fund it yourself. That's right, we'll fund it ourselves as well. And that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's not a cheap exercise.
Wow.
So I spoke with the head of AFMA and I said, we're going to need a lot of data. We're going to need a lot of science. And I put Pavo in charge. He actually did science at Sydney Uni. So that really helped. He understood all that. He was on a lot of the committees with AFMA, helped them with their sustainability piece and research and that type of thing. So he got heavily involved. Because, yes, science is not my forte. Yeah, we went down that path. We had endless meetings. We had to fly out an auditor from London because you have to have an independent auditor. So there are people that MSC will let you use. And You bring them out, you
Right.
pay them, you're going through the whole process, and then we finally got the certification in 2015.
Game changer?
Game changing, absolutely game changing. We were at home, and I've actually got a photo of me with Sophie, our other daughter. She would have only been a month or two old. I'm holding her, and we've got the certification. And the phone rang. Pretty sure it rang at home. And this guy from Boston, Robbie, said, "I hear you've got MSc for swordfish. I'm the biggest swordfish buyer in the United States. I want all your swordfish." I went, "Okay, that sounds pretty good. I don't know you. I don't know if you're going to pay me," but he goes, "When's the next boat's coming in?" And we told him, and he said, "Send it all." So I said, "Are we doing this? Are we going to send all this swordfish to this guy we've never met?"
Did you send much to the States at that stage?
We were sending it some to the States, but a lot of it was through brokers and
Right.
other people. So this was direct into him.
Yeah.
And he had a huge business called Great Eastern in Boston. And we just ended up sending it like tonnage. You're talking tonnage. And we got paid.
Tons to the States, to Boston, to this person.
To this guy that I'd just spoken to on the phone.
Client, first
But he was so
relationship.
excited about the MSc because swordfish, I think there was only one or two other swordfish fisheries in the world that had it.
Wow.
And he supplied Whole Foods.
Yep.
And Whole Foods is very big in the US, and they have that whole fresh where it has to be MSc. So he said, "I need it for Whole Foods and I need it for all these stores." America's massive, you know. There's a whole population play there. So we sent it to him. And, and on the big weeks, we developed the relationship with him. We flew over and met him. He was not at all what I thought he was going to look like. And, he had a big team, and it's just a whole other world over there, especially Boston. I love the US. It's amazing. But, on a big week, you'd send him 40-ton swordfish. You're putting it on commercial flights. Fresh, not frozen. So when you ask, why is this industry so hard? Well, when you're flying fresh fish around the world, on commercial flights that don't make a connection in LA or San Fran to get across to the East Coast, and you get the call in the middle of the night that it's sitting there waiting for another flight.
And then talk to me how the shift in branding or the pivot between Walker's Seafood and Walker's Tuna.
Yeah. So we continued to do that, and then COVID struck. That was just a terrible thing for our business because we were all air freight and all the planes stopped. And ultimately all our fish, a lot of it was going into restaurants and that through wholesalers and things, and people weren't dining out and everything got shut down. So I can remember driving down Park and Parade when it started to unfold. I'd gotten a phone call that morning from someone in the US saying to me, "Heidi, I don't want your fish this week. Stop. Don't send me anything." I said, No. I've got boats coming in with, 10 ton of fish. I've got flights. You guys don't send it. And I twigged at that point there's something seriously going on. We just started to hear about COVID.
Yeah.
And I said, "Why?" He said, "This COVID thing, we're shutting down in the US. It's all shutting down. I'm shutting my business." And I couldn't believe it. And then it was filtering through. And I was driving down Park Parade, and I rang our bank manager, Dan. We deal with NAB Agribusiness, Brisbane. And I rang him. I said, "We're in trouble. There's something." And he goes, "Yeah, I think we're all in trouble." So I'd gotten to work, and, we'd called a management meeting, and, this is a problem. No one wants your fish. You can't fly it. ScoMo had gotten on the news, grounding all the planes. I said, the boats were literally coming in 5 or 6 days with all this fresh fish. Are we going to take it to the tip? What are we going to do with it? Do you know what I mean? Because Australia can't handle that kind of volume. That's why we export. We fill Australia first, and then we export. Pretty sure I rang John Sussman, my old mate that introduced me to Neil, and said, "Do you know anyone at Coles or Woolies?" He said, Yeah, Coles, I do. I said, I need someone really fast. I want to tell them that we want to put all our fish into their stores. So he put me in touch with someone, and I said, "I've got boats coming in 5 days, and we need somewhere to put this fish, and I'm not taking it to the tip, and no one else can buy it." They got back to me in 2 days, said, "We'll take it." I think it's the fastest deal ever cut with Coles.
So during early COVID days, the east coast of Australia in Coles were getting
export grade sashimi, and it became News Limited's biggest story for that year. We were in online, we were in the papers. Yeah, that go down to your local Coles and go and eat this beautiful. So we sent it to someone to process for them, and they processed it and put it through Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria.
Yeah.
And we continued to supply them for well over 12 months with all that product. We also have set up a little shop outside our work, which is not what I want to be doing on a daily basis, dealing with the general public.
A retail business.
Yeah, selling 2-3 kilos at a time, because we're talking tonnage, work tonnage. And when you're standing there, someone arguing with you over 2 kilos, oh, that size is not right.
Were you on the front there?
Yeah.
You were director of
I was
communications there as well?
Yeah, and retail and everything. But you just have to do what you do. It's to survive. We didn't want to sack our staff. We didn't want to have to let anyone go. We wanted to keep the business alive, because once you lose those staff, your business crumbles. You'll have to start again. And no one knew with COVID, how long is this going to take? Is this a 6-month thing, a 3-month thing, a year thing, 5 years? So it was just trying really hard to keep the business going. So we switched the boats from fishing for the 5 species as surface fishing to something we can do, which is called deep setting for albacore tuna. So albacore tuna is frozen on land, and we ship sea freight that to the big canneries around the world that produce for Europe and America. So we'd been doing that for a long time, because we always catch albacore. It's albacore season now. And we thought, that's it, we'll ramp up the albacore fishing. We'll move to sea freight. That's what we'll do. We'll still catch a bit of tuna and swordfish and other things, and we're just trying hard to supply whoever we could in Australia at much lower prices. So then we really ramped the fishing up to albacore fishing. And at that point, Bob and I both said, we should be looking at doing this for a brand for Australia, And we were toying with the idea, but it was too hard during COVID, because we were dealing with so much stress, The bank, we owed them a lot of money. They put all our repayments on hold. But when they put it on hold, doesn't mean that when you start paying back that they don't want that interest and everything else. So we just said, all right. So we were toying with the idea then. That would have been around 2020. But we just kind of parked it because it was too hard. And then we had an offer, someone to buy our quota, to buy all of it. So restrictions had been lifted, things were coming back to some sort of normality, and there was some investment companies, superannuation companies, wanting to buy quota as investment, because they were running out of things to invest their money in. There's only so many things you can invest. There's so much superannuation money. It's incredible. So we were approached to sell all our quota. And we had a large debt with the bank, really large, that we'd have to start back. And the business was definitely not recovered at this point. It was still hard times. So we made the decision to sell the quota, and we could lease it back. So it was a sale lease agreement.
So you got cashed out, but kept the right to fish.
Yeah, just paying a lot more than you would.
And you own it.
Yeah, but it was the right decision at the time, and allowed us to clear a lot of debts and set ourselves up for the next phase of what we wanted to do. Right. So we did that. And then, we started to really ramp up again. I'd been going to the US a bit back and forth just for work purposes. There's a big seafood expo in Boston once a year, which I usually fly over for. I was just seeing these products, and they didn't have provenance. There was no truth to what they were saying. There was so much greenwashing in the industry around sustainability, provenance.
As in, like, where was this fish caught? By who?
Correct.
What company?
Correct. And a lot of Australian companies are guilty. Serena's massively guilty of that. I
saw in the Serena jar going down the aisle doing prep for this chat. That sustainability is important to them.
I'm sure it is. We can all say that. And they also use terms like pole and line caught, making it sustainable. Not really, because it's not really how you catch the fish. It's the science and the stock of the fishery itself. Because if you're catching a fish a certain way in a depleting resource, then it doesn't matter how you catch it. You're still
not sustainable.
Still not sustainable. So,
as an example, they're not blue ticked. So
they're not blue ticked.
Yeah,
for a good reason. They wouldn't know where their tuna comes from. And so most of these companies didn't, and it made me upset. I kept thinking, we've got this beautiful albacore tuna we catch. It's from Australian waters. It's so clean. It's so out. And we've got all this Australian olive oil, and why can't we have our own product? And why is nothing in the supermarket Australian? Why is John West? Why don't they use our albacore?
Yeah, speaking to you as well, in the last month or so, I didn't even click to think that there's no Australian canned tuna available.
Yeah, you walk down, Woolworths and Coles, and there's no Australian. And so then I got angry. I do get angry sometimes. I got angry because why aren't they buying our albacore tuna to use? It's there. We're shipping it overseas for Europe to have it and for America to have it and turned into brands. Why don't they? Because it's too expensive. and because they use much lower grade fish, and it's just too expensive for them.
And then Neil Perry is involved in this next stage, isn't he?
So God bless Neil. He's such a lovely person, and he's just so passionate about his produce and where it comes from. Margaret Restaurant in Sydney, it's my favourite restaurant in Australia, if not the world. It just blows my mind. And I'd been flying down there a bit to see Neil. I always popped in, and we always went to his restaurants, took the girls there. It was so lovely, he really looked after us. And he had on the wall, he'd bought Baker Blue, he'd started this bakery next to his restaurant, Margaret, and it had on the wall Walker's albacore preserved tuna sandwich.
So effectively,
he was making
tin tuna.
Yeah, he was making it
out of Walker's albacore.
Yeah, because we were flying him albacore fresh down there,
yeah.
and he was actually said, "You're making this with your chefs?" Yeah. So can we do this on scale? Sure, absolutely. So Parva and I met with him, and we had the lady from the cannery, because there are no canneries in Australia. You can't. There's no manufacturing of this type. It's one bugbear I have, but it is just the way it is. So all the canneries are based in either Thailand, or there's a few in Spain and places. But we were dealing with RS Cannery, lovely lady Lee, who owns that boutique. She really looks after all the workers, and it's all first world in Thailand now. Like, it's their level of manufacturing is just incredible. And they're producing for all the big companies. And so she flew out, met with Neil. We did some taste testing. Because we'd got hold of some olive oil, thanks to Neil from Cobram Estate. And she'd made some batches of it and brought it out. And a bit more salt for that one, not quite so much salt. And then boom, off we were. Yeah, we were going down the path of now 2 businesses.
Yeah.
Which, one business is hard, but 2 businesses. But we could just see the writing on the wall a little bit for Walker's Tuna, that it wasn't going to recover like we thought it was going to do out of COVID, and it was going to take a long time.
Yeah.
And then we were no longer going to keep expanding at the rate we thought we would. But now we had an opportunity to assist Walker's Seafoods with Walker's Tuna, because obviously the tuna we use is off our vessels in that side of the business, and to supply it that way.
The length of time left on the quotas, how long did you have for that?
We had a 5-year agreement with them.
What was the plan after that? Because you still need quotas to get albacore.
We do. The plan was either we'll keep leasing it off them, which we can do. We had all the rights to do that, or we could just purchase.
There were options.
Yeah, there were options. So we had options on the table for that.
Yeah.
And if we were going to focus a lot on albacore, there's endless albacore quota to get access to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's quite a big.
There was no risk that you were going to.
There was no risk really, unless it got so big that we caught all the albacore.
There's nothing enough to buy.
We didn't have enough quota because of the demand, but that would be a fabulous problem to have. We went into the design phase, and Parvo designed all the packaging.
Wow.
So he's very creative, and his very best friend from Sydney days, is a graphic designer. So they just spent months and months on the phone, like just tweaking designing from scratch, doing it. Because we'd met with a few people as like design studios, and they just didn't sort of get what we wanted to do. He went, I'll do it. I'll just do it all myself. So we turned our family room into just a big graphic design studio, and pieces of paper everywhere.
Yeah,
and the kids getting involved at this point, they're loving it, thinking, oh, wow, we're going to make a product to be in the retail stores. I just thought, it'll be so easy. I'll just email Woolworths or Coles or ring them, and they'll just want this product straight away. Little did I know that's not how it works. So that was a very big learning curve too.
To get into the bigs.
Well, you need distributors. You need, I had worked in FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, a long time ago, and a lot had changed since then. So we had to design the product, we had to find distributors, we had to go through range reviews with Woolworths and Coles, you had to submit, they have to find space for you, you have to put an argument in place, you have to know the right people, you have to speak their language. So I ended up getting a consulting group to help with that, because I just realised I was in way over my head. Yeah, and at some point, you've just got to bite the bullet and go, I can't do this. I was trying to run Walker Seafood, do the Walker Tuna, do the kids' schooling, getting into this.
And applying for the Coles and Woolworths.
Yeah, and doing all of that. It was too hard.
And then when did you get the notice that you're going to get picked up by Coles and Woolworths?
So we got into into Woolworths. We got into Woolworths quite early because now not onto the main shelf, the tuna aisle, just onto these little towers in 200 stores, which is where they like to put new people. We were really excited to get in. That was quite quick, within 6 months.
Okay.
And our former distributor had really helped with that because they had a gap there, and there was some other tuna brand was meant to go in from Spain. The shipment didn't turn up. They went, "I got something for you." So in we went.
Good
So
timing.
I felt like a winner. It was a little trickier with Coles. I went back to them to say, we had a great relationship back in COVID. Remember us?
Yeah,
Remember
yeah.
me? I'm back.
Giving you not fresh stuff now, but just canned
I
stuff.
flew down. They were excited. I emailed the CEO because that's usually what I do when I just go straight to the top. She thought it was fantastic, and I flew down and met with the whole team. And it's not that they didn't want to take it. There are absolute systems have to follow. There's a lot of regulation in supermarkets. Comes down from the government. The way they have to behave and act and all this sort of thing. And it just takes time. They're a massive supermarket chain that can't just go, oh, let's put Walkers in next week. Got planograms. They've got things they have to do. So we just found out last week that we are going into every single Coles as of August. So that's really exciting because now we can say that anyone can buy it anywhere because it's huge. It's massive. It's not easy, and it's, there are a lot of things you have to pay for along the way, your own marketing and all this sort of thing, but fair enough. And it's just, again, been a learning curve for us.
Yeah, right.
And we've had fantastic support from locals, Whiteside GA, all our Be Fresh, all our local people have supported us so far along the way. And so many people shop there. A lot of people shop in independents.
Yeah.
So it's been really good to see all those independents supporting the brand, and we try as hard as we can to push as many people into those stores. Unbelievable story. And you're also looking at going to the States? Yes. So we launch into the US next month.
Walker's Tuna goes to the States.
Walker's Tuna is going into the US.
The canned products.
It'll go into, we're trying to get into the aisle. So we'll still be a pouch and a jar because we don't do cans.
Yeah.
Pav and I don't like cans. I think if you're competing in that market, you're competing in the bottom end of the market.
Sure.
It's cheap. And people say, I'm not going to spend $4 on your can when this can's $1.
$1, yeah.
Pouches are better. They're not lined with plastic as well. They're a foil inner. And glass is a great. So it's just, we're doing a more high-level version of tuna that people aren't used to here.
Yeah.
So people, when they buy their tuna, are getting a really inferior product. So if you went to Europe, you'd see such beautiful tuna and seafood products in jars and cans and pouches. And even in the US, they have a lot of good products. The one thing that they are missing in the US is the provenance. It's that piece. Yeah. So a lot of big brands over there will talk up all their credentials and the sustainability piece. A lot of it's untrue. I was just in the US a couple of months ago. I went to Expo West, which is one of the big shows over there. And I saw Safe Catch, and I saw a lot of the big brands, and I spoke to them and said, where does your tuna come from? Oh, go speak to that guy over there. Oh, excuse me, where does your tuna come from? Oh, go speak to that lady over there. They can't answer that question. They don't know.
Wow.
It's just a commodity. They're buying it from brokers around the world.
Sure.
And so I've engaged with a commercial director over there and other people, and we're growing our team over there, and we're going to launch in. It's nerve-wracking.
Huge.
It's huge, and it's not cheap.
What's the drive to keep going, Heids? Where does that come from?
That's a really good question. I don't think I know how to stop. I like being successful. I love the cut and thrust. I love the hustle. I love getting off a plane in a new country to go and do business. I like, wheeling and dealing with people and talking business. I love meeting other business owners, hearing their stories. I just love it all. And I can't imagine not doing that. I actually get worried about what am I going to do maybe when I'm 70 and I don't have anything going on in business.
Oh, what's to suggest you need to stop there?
Yeah, I know.
Ben Crow talks about separating the person from the persona.
Oh, yeah.
So who's Heidi without being Heidi from Walker's Tuna or Walker's Seafood?
Well, look, I'm at home with my family. I love our family. We have such beautiful holidays together. I really make sure that we go on an annual trip or a few trips a year to different places. But at the
Last time I saw you were there with farmers markets on a Saturday morning.
Love our farmers markets, Koala. They're the best. So family time is really important. Love that. But, do you want to be with your family 24/7? Probably not, no.
Well, you want to be able to achieve.
Yeah.
Right?
And have a bit of separation. They go off and do their thing, and I go off and do my thing, which is work, and it's great. Yeah, I just love it. And I think I might be a bit of an adrenaline junkie when it comes to work. I haven't checked my emails for about an hour now, so could be some exciting things coming through. There could also be some bad news.
You're such a prominent face for this brand and for the industry itself in the Sunshine Coast, but you've had 2 different PMs call you at the relevant time to seek advice. And
we had Scott Morrison come to our premises during COVID.
And from the outside, you look at your story as such a success story and so amazing. What is something that people would find surprising, or what's the experience been that I guess some people might not know?
I'm sure business owners will resonate with this, but it's the stress behind the scenes. It's the failures along the way, many failures along the way. Even now with our new brand, there are things we've learned that we thought, why didn't we think to do it that way? Or why did we do that? And it's expensive to learn, really expensive to learn. So it's probably that stress. I'm an upbeat sort of person. When people bump into me, I'm like, how's everything? Great, I feel great. When deep down, something really stressful might be happening at the moment. So I think that would probably be behind the scenes, it's not all smiley, happy faces.
You obviously share that well with Pavo, though.
Yeah. Well, look, for Pavo, I try and make our house sort of an area somewhere I can be without the stress of work. It doesn't work that way all the time, but I do say to him, can we not talk about work at this point? Might be 5:30 on a Friday. I really can't talk about work anymore. And he might have something he's busting to tell me, but make him wait. Usually till the morning, I don't know why, but you do have to have a little bit of a separation because, we're husband and wife as well, and I want to hang out with my husband.
Not your business partner.
No, let's talk work. Let's bring the whole management team over then.
Yeah.
We went out to Market Bistro for dinner last Friday, and it was so lovely. We had the nice time, and we both made a conscious effort to not talk about work. Beautiful. So it was good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this and your time. I think you're spot on. And I hope on reflection, it's worth it. Yeah. The business, the hustle, the heartache, the stress, the mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, I think you learn a lot along the way when you do it yourself, when you just have to keep going and fighting and, there's a challenge every day. The US come online for me in the morning. At 3 a.m. I'll go to the bathroom and I'll check my phone. I can see all the WhatsApp messages and is it good? Is it bad? But
the part of you is going, this is the hustle.
It's a hustle.
This is what I love.
It is what it is. Yeah. And just, you really got to fix your problems quickly because there's another one right around the corner.
Yeah. I love that. All right. Before you go, fast 5 questions.
Yes.
What does success mean to you, Heidi?
What does success mean? There's so many different aspects to that because at work I could tell you success means this, this and this. And at home, success means me being with my family and being happy and us all enjoying being together.
Yeah. Happiness?
Yeah, being with my family but I get happiness out of work too. I really do enjoy
maybe
work.
The balance?
Balance, yeah. That's a good one. Balance.
What does the normal morning routine look like other than the 3 a.m.
Yeah, I check my phone early. I've learned to put it down if I can't deal with it right now and get a few extra hours sleep. Up at 6 o'clock, helping get the girls ready for school, dealing with just emails and phone calls that sometimes have to be taken care of then because those people, I'm going to lose the East Coast US by 8 a.m. They're all offline. So doing that and grabbing some breakfast and getting everyone out the door.
Love it. Is there a piece of advice you'd give to the world from all of your experiences? What would that be?
At the end of the day, it comes down to you, how your life is going to go. I think you have to be responsible for yourself and your own happiness generally.
I love that. And then somebody who you think would be a good guest to have on the show?
Ooh, you had Tony Kelly on?
I have had Tony.
Okay.
He's a good story.
Yeah, he's a good story. Does it have to live on the Sunshine Coast?
No.
Could be anybody?
Could bring him in, yeah.
Does it have to be someone we kind of know?
Ideally.
Yeah.
McDonald's or something.
I was going to say Gina Reinhardt, but someone else to have on the podcast. Do you know Billy Moore?
No, I don't. But I've been also told the same. That someone else has given me that answer as well.
I used to work with Billy Moore.
Okay.
I worked at the North City Bears.
Yeah. Okay.
for a stint before I met Pavo, and they were fun times for the actual football club.
Yeah.
And he was just a great person, great leader, great person. I think you'd get a lot out of him.
Okay. Beautiful. Heidi Walker, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you, Richard. I've really enjoyed it.
Good. That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Next time you're closing a business deal at a long lunch, turn to the person next to you, tell them all about the show. It really means a lot. A huge thank you to Heidi for sharing her journey through leadership, family, and business growth. If today's conversation inspired you, please subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. It really means a lot. Until next time,